May 27, 1941. 6:23 in the morning, North Atlantic, 300 miles west of France. Inside the battleship Bismarck, 19-year-old Matrosengefreiter Hans Rademacher stood at his battle station in the starboard secondary battery, and he understood with absolute certainty that he was going to die today. The ship was circling. It had been circling all night. The rudder was jammed 15 degrees to port, and no amount of engineering genius, no amount of desperate effort by the damage control teams could fix it. They had tried everything. Divers had gone over the side in the middle of the night, trying to attach cables to physically force the rudder straight. The North Atlantic in May, 4-degree water. Those men had lasted minutes before hypothermia took them. They had tried using the propellers alone to steer, running one engine forward and one in reverse, but the ship was too big, too heavy, and it just kept circling like a dying whale. And now, as the pale Arctic dawn broke over the horizon, Rademacher could see them. British battleships. 2 of them. HMS King George V and HMS Rodney. Giants. Fresh, undamaged, their magazines full, their crews rested. Behind them, heavy cruisers Dorsetshire and Norfolk. And surrounding everything, a swarm of destroyers. 27 British warships in total, converging on one crippled German battleship that could only sail in circles. The British had been chasing them for 1,700 miles, ever since Bismarck had done the unthinkable 3 days ago and blown HMS Hood, the pride of the Royal Navy, into fragments in less than 8 minutes. 1,400 British sailors dead in an instant, and now the bill was due. Rademacher had been at sea for exactly 4 months. This was his first deployment. He had joined the Kriegsmarine because his father had served in the Imperial Navy in the last war, and because the recruiting posters in Hamburg had made it look glorious. Steel ships, proud men, defending the fatherland. They had not mentioned this. They had not mentioned standing in a steel box, waiting to be killed, knowing there was no escape, no hope, nothing but the next few hours of hell before the ocean took you. The intercom crackled. The voice of Kapitän Lindemann, the ship's commander. His voice was steady, almost gentle. Men of the Bismarck, you have fought with honor. You have shown the world what German seamanship means. The enemy outnumbers us, but they do not outmatch our courage. We will fight to the last shell, for Germany, for the Kriegsmarine, for each other. And then, the firing started. If you are finding yourself pulled into this story, if you want to know what happened in those final hours aboard Bismarck, do something for us right now. Hit that like button. It tells us you want more of these German perspective stories, more of the voices that history often silences. And subscribe, because we are building something different here. These are not the stories you have heard before. These are the stories from the other side. The men who fought, who suffered, who died, and who history has often forgotten. Your like, your subscription, it keeps these voices alive. The British opened fire at 8:47. The range was 16,000 yards. 8 miles. The shells took nearly 30 seconds to arrive. Rademacher heard them before he saw them. A sound like a freight train passing overhead, growing louder, closer, and then the first salvo landed. Massive geysers of water erupted around the ship, some of them 200 feet high. The next salvo was closer, and the one after that hit. The impact was like nothing Rademacher had ever experienced. The entire ship lurched. The sound was not an explosion. It was a physical force that hit you in the chest, that made your lungs compress, that made your ears ring so badly you could not hear your own thoughts. Bismarck's main guns were firing back. 8 15-inch rifles, each one throwing a shell that weighed as much as a small car. But the fire control was failing. The rangefinders were damaged. The optics were shattered. The gunnery officers were firing at visual estimates, at muzzle flashes, at shapes in the smoke and spray. They scored hits. They absolutely did. Bismarck's gunners were among the best in the world, and they put shells into King George V, into Rodney. But it was not enough. It was never going to be enough. By 9:15, Bismarck had taken over 100 direct hits from heavy shells. The forward fire control station was gone. The main director was destroyed. The bridge was a shattered wreck. But here is the thing that British historians would spend decades arguing about. None of those shells, not one, penetrated the main armored belt. Bismarck's citadel, the armored box that protected the magazines, the engine rooms, the vital spaces, that armor held 12.6 inches of Krupp cemented steel. The British were firing 14-inch and 16-inch armor-piercing shells, and they were bouncing off, or shattering, or penetrating the superstructure, but not reaching anything vital. The ship was being destroyed from the outside in, but the heart, the engine, the armored core, that was still intact. Rademacher's gun had stopped firing. They had run out of ammunition 20 minutes ago. The loading crews from the magazine had stopped coming. He did not know if they were dead, or if the passageways were blocked, or if the magazine itself was flooded. It did not matter. There was nothing left to shoot. Around him, men were sitting on the deck, smoking cigarettes, writing letters they knew would never be mailed. Someone started singing. It was an old Swabian folk song. Muss denn, zum Städtele hinaus. Must I leave my little town? It is a song about leaving home, about saying goodbye. It is the song German soldiers have sung for 200 years when they march away to war. And in that moment, in that steel tomb, being pounded to pieces by 2,800 shells, the crew of the Bismarck sang. Not the horsed vessel lied, not a Nazi anthem, a song about home, about the places they would never see again. Rademacher sang too. He did not remember deciding to sing. He just opened his mouth and the words came out, and the tears came with them. At 10:15 the order came. All hands, abandon fire control positions, prepare to scuttle. The decision had already been made. Kapitän Hans Rademacher, the executive officer, had been going through the ship, through the spaces that were still accessible, telling the damage control parties. The scuttling charges were being set. The sea cocks were being opened. Bismarck was going to die, but it was going to die on German terms. The British were not going to board her. They were not going to capture her. They were not going to parade her into a British port as a prize. The crew would sink her themselves. Rademacher climbed up through the hatches, up toward the deck. The passageways were chaos. Smoke, water, darkness, men scrambling in every direction. Some trying to get up, some going down to set charges, some just sitting against the bulkheads, too wounded or too exhausted to move. He reached the main deck at 10:30. The scene was apocalyptic. The entire forward superstructure was gone, just twisted steel and smoke. Fires were burning everywhere. The aft turrets, Anton and Bruno, were silent, their barrels pointed at crazy angles. Bodies were everywhere. And still the British were firing. They were so close now, some of the cruisers were at 4,000 yards, and they were just pouring shells into the wreck, over and over. Men were going over the side, hundreds of them, jumping into the North Atlantic. The water temperature was 4 degrees Celsius. Survival time in water that cold is 15 minutes, maybe 20 if you are strong and lucky. Most of the men did not have life jackets. The ones who did, it would not matter. But they jumped anyway, because staying on the ship meant burning or drowning when it went down. Rademacher saw his gun captain, Obergefreiter Wilhelm Schmidt, a man who had been in the Navy for 12 years, who had a wife and 2 children in Kiel, standing at the railing, and Schmidt looked at him and said, "It was an honor to serve with you." And then he jumped. Rademacher never saw him again. At 10:36, the scuttling charges detonated. The explosions were muffled deep inside the ship, but Rademacher felt them through the deck. The ship shuddered, and then it began to roll, slowly at first, then faster, rolling to port, the deck tilting beneath his feet, men sliding, tumbling, falling into the ocean. Rademacher grabbed a railing, held on, and then he let go. He hit the water, and the cold was a physical shock, like being stabbed with 1,000 knives. He could not breathe, he could not think. He just kicked, trying to get away from the ship, because when it went down, the suction would pull you under. He turned in the water, looked back, and watched the Bismarck die. The ship rolled completely over, the massive hull rising out of the water, the port side now pointing at the sky, and for just a moment it hung there, suspended, and then it slid beneath the surface. Stern first, then the middle, then the bow. And it was gone. 9 minutes from the scuttling charges to the final disappearance. 9 minutes. 2,106 men had been aboard. 114 would be rescued. Rademacher was one of them. A British destroyer, HMS Maori, pulled him out of the water after 40 minutes. He was hypothermic, barely conscious, but alive. The British sailors wrapped him in blankets, gave him hot tea, and did not treat him as an enemy. They treated him as a fellow sailor, a man who had survived what no man should have to survive. He spent the rest of the war in a prisoner camp in Canada. He returned to Germany in 1947. He lived until 1993, and for the rest of his life, he would wake up some nights hearing that song. Muss, denn, the sound of 2,000 men singing goodbye to the world. The Bismarck rested on the ocean floor, 3 miles down, for 58 years before Robert Ballard found the wreck in 1989. And what Ballard found confirmed what the survivors had always said. The hull was intact. The armor belt was unbroken. The British had not sunk the Bismarck. The crew had. They had opened the seacocks, set the charges, and sent their ship to the bottom on their own terms. Some historians still argue. They say the British sank it, that the scuttling was just a final gesture. But the evidence is there, in the wreck, in the testimony, in the engineering analysis. The Bismarck was destroyed, but it was not defeated. There is a difference. And the men who died aboard her, they died knowing they had controlled their own fate in a war where so little could be controlled. If this story moved you, if you understand now why we are telling these stories from the German perspective, leave a comment. Tell us where you are watching from. Tell us if you knew this story, or if this is the first time you have heard it from the men who lived it. These stories matter. These voices matter. And we will keep telling them, as long as you keep listening.